Hi, welcome to our renowned gamer series for the Guildford Games Festival. I am joined by Glenn Moore.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
You are so welcome. Thanks so much for talking to us. So just give us an overview of your career up until now, and I guess, like how have you gotten into games, as it were?
So games have always been just a separate compartmentalised part of my life. Career-wise, I'm a stand-up comedian who, as a result, has a tremendous amount of time to play video games. And I co-present on the Absolute Radio breakfast show as well during weekdays, which means, obviously, I'm home from about 10:30 in the morning, which, again, lends itself very well to playing video games for hours on end.
Perfect. I mean, that really does seem like a good way to do it. Assuming you're allowed to then go into work the next day and talk a little bit about how exciting it was to play something the day before. Just in a tiny, just to get it out there and make sure people are aware of how cool it is to be a gamer.
You know what, actually, I've always sort of kept that part of my life, not like quiet necessarily, but if people don't have the same consoles as you or the same gaming interests as you, then it's really hard to actually bring up that conversation in the first place. In a different way to, like, if someone goes, oh, I watched this TV show last night, and you go, oh, tell me more. And if you never really ever have a conversation if someone goes, oh, I played this video game last night, and you go, all right,
cool.
Do you want a cup of tea? I mean, it's like, it's been fun finding more and more people over the last couple of years who are just sort of having that sort of conversation that is a more fun thing to just generally talk about. I think because of the, I guess, changes in levels of interactivity with games and the different gaming experiences that people can have with the same game, that means you can have a more interesting conversation as opposed to, this character did this for me last night. And you go, well, yeah, exactly. It was an on-rails game, so I had exactly the same situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think we're definitely getting to that point as well where it's not, the idea of games is not what it is anymore. It's so broad and it can be so niche, and it can you can be a gamer without fully maybe realizing that you're a gamer. I mean, I remember that stat that came out a few years ago that showed that in the UK there were far more female gamers than male gamers, but that's because we had the explosion of mobile games and they were so accessible, and those women probably didn't consider themselves to be gamers, and yet they're kind of contributing to the broader picture, which is rad. Yeah.
And the debate around what even constitutes a game is a nightmare. I had almost a yelling match with some friends months ago about whether or not a Choose Your Own Adventure book was a game.
Of course it is.
And it is. It is.
It is. And it was Charlie Brooker, wasn't it, who put Twitter as his number one game out of a 100 countdown, and Twitter was his number one.
I think that's when you go, no, come on.
I don't know, though, man.
Now you're muddying the waters.
But you're getting...
because the problem was, the conversation we were having with a friend was, they were arguing that something like, say, Journey or like Necro Barista isn't a game because everyone has exactly the same experience and you can't fail. But like, I think ultimately you can. Like, if you fail to press the screen, you don't get the game.
Yep, fair. And you can walk away. Like, I know so many people that walked away from Journey before they got to the the big kind of reveal that made it so wonderful and so
absolutely,
kind of...
yeah. And I've walked away from the novel The Green Mile on many an occasion, and it remains one of the worst games I've ever played.
I'll take it. So, let's talk about where it kind of began for you. So, favourite childhood game or earliest gaming memory?
I don't know, because I don't know if I've dreamt this. I've got a really vivid memory of playing, and it was years before my time, Pong. I'm absolutely certain that when I was about 4, my dad rolled out this rickety console, because Pong was just a console on its own, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
And we plugged it into the TV, and we played it once, and then I never, ever saw it again. And I'm still not certain about whether or not I dreamt it. So aside from that, first console was like Sega Mega Drive 2. So I had all those sort of like triple pack games where you get like Shinobi, Streets of Rage, and Golden Axe all in one. And it meant you never really committed to one game fully, especially because you were never able to like save your game or anything like that. You had to restart Sonic every single day. That what it meant was you ended up flitting between loads and loads and loads of sort of different games. And I didn't really have sort of like a keen interest. It was a fun sort of thing to have. But I think by the time I was about maybe 8 or 9 and I got a PlayStation, that's when it suddenly, that's when games became my absolute favourite thing. and I had various sort of good memories. I remember the day I unwrapped it on Christmas Day, and it was the best. And I unwrapped. I was given Spyro the Dragon, and then I rang up one of the cool guy at school and was like, "Yeah, I got a PlayStation." He was like, "What game did you get?" And I was like, "Spyro." And he was like, "That's shit. That's for babies." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm an idiot. Oh yeah, of course it is." Oh, I felt really bad for the rest of the day. But Spyro was like the first PlayStation game I had, followed by like Tomb Raider and Tokyo Touring Cars, and I just loved them all. But I think my earliest like game that I absolutely fell in love with would either have to be Final Fantasy IX or Soul Reaver: Legacy of Kain, because I remember that was the first time where like it was all I thought about outside of playing the game. And I remember having once, by the time I was on like the third disc of Final Fantasy, having a dream about Final Fantasy IX, which was mad. And I remember as well, before I bought Soul Reaver: Legacy of Kain, and I was so excited to get it, I read a review about it in some now like defunct PlayStation magazine, where I didn't really understand a lot of the words in the review, or like some of the words like I recognised what they were, but didn't really. And I remember the review saying something like, there's various levels where you need to like stab, claw, gore, and gouge your way through. And I remember, this is so tragic, getting the dictionary and like looking up the meaning of all those words to be like, oh my god, I can't wait to be able to get to do that in the game. So I think it was around about like I was about 9 years old, where it was like, oh, I really hope I can one day monetize this, or in some way let it not regulate every part of my being, because otherwise gaming is going to ruin my life, because it is all I think about.
And how did that go?
Pretty badly. I'm currently dialing in from rehab, but it's lovely to be here.
Good. So would you say there are any ways that games inspire your day-to-day work?
I think so, in terms of like, it relies on, I think, the topics that games attempt to sort of address in the first place. And I've been helped by, say, like, so let's take, say, something like, in terms of writing like standard material, you usually want to write something that is like a personal experience to you and that only you can necessarily talk about, but also at the same time you want to find a balance between how important it is to you and how relatable it is to the audience. And I really and to bring like a sort of gaming sort of analogy into it, if you look at something like Supermassive Games and you say took Until Dawn or Man of Medan, and the antagonists, the monsters they sort of they focus on, are not the sort you usually get in a horror game, where it's not necessarily like zombies or even a particular like character like Frankenstein the monster or Dracula, where the average person, the average member of the public, has got such like a firm grasp in their head of what Dracula is or what a zombie is. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to sort of put your own spin on it. And what I really like in something like Until Dawn, where it's like a Wendigo, or like I know that with Little Hope that's coming up, where I know little about it because I haven't played it yet and I can't wait. Where, as far as I know, it's about witches, which I think the average person doesn't really have like a firm grasp in their head of what a witch is. But it makes it really exciting because everyone's got like a base level of understanding about it, but it allows the game to fully put its own authority and go, well, this is my interpretation of it. And I found that something like that has really helped in terms of writing your own standard material, where you go, I can talk about this particular subject where I know that the audience are going to vaguely know about it, but if you come into it with a level of authority and understanding in your own interpretation, then it makes it so much easier to sort of bring an audience on that journey with you. So wanky, I'm sorry. But
no, that's such a good answer. Like, that's such a good answer, and you're right, because with something like that, you have an understanding of what the monster's going to be, and this is my interpretation of that thing, and then you've got to also the action of actually bringing those two things face to face with your fear versus, oh my god, that's the real fear.
Exactly.
Like it's really interesting.
Because I think you reach a problem if you tackle a subject where fans and players or audience members feel that they know more than you do, which can sometimes be useful as a sort of building and learning experience. But at the same time, I think that's where you can sometimes get a sort of toxic fan culture, where you get with something like, say, Game of Thrones, or even like Last of Us Part 2, where people feel they've got an ownership of something, and they then won't allow a storyline to deviate away from exactly what they wanted to happen. Yeah. And that's never really how creativity is ever gonna develop.
Yeah, for sure. It's very rare that I comment on Reddit, for example, but when the new Fable was announced, someone wrote in the Fable forum, or on the Fable Reddit, everyone that was here before this date is a real Fable fan. It's just like, don't gatekeep something that's so important.
I felt the same way with like, when Horizon Zero Dawn came to PC and the amount of PlayStation fans, and I myself am almost exclusively a PlayStation fan, but the fury that people felt that suddenly a whole new generation of people were going to be allowed to play their game.
It's like, it's great.
It's just so weird, the idea that you want to sort of gate off your own community and hate when new fans... And I'm saying it from a kind of a vague level of understanding, being, infuriated when in, say, 2003, other friends of mine starts to hear about Kings of Leon. And I was like, no, they're
my band.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of understand it, I suppose.
Yeah, but it's...
But, to actually voice it...
You should just irrationally keep it inside and grumble to yourself,
exactly.
as opposed to suddenly commandeering every forum and going, how dare you play this?
Yeah, how dare you care about the thing that I care about? Leave me alone. That's very strange. So how important would you say, aside from obviously the games internet, how important would you say games are as an escape?
This year, very. I'm in fact, do you know what? I'm just going to check on my phone because I've kept a list of how many games I've not played, but how many games I've completed. And so obviously this year, everyone found, for the most part, a lot more time to play video games.
Yep.
So yesterday, with the completion of Little Orpheus on my phone, that was the 72nd game I completed this year since lockdown started.
Oh my god!
In answer to your question, apparently very, very important to me as an escape.
That's amazing!
Yeah, I mean, obviously, bear in mind, so many of these are like very small sort of indie games where this goes on for like literally 45 minutes, or something like Sayonara Wild Hearts, where you're like, I could literally finish this in an hour. But some of those are pretty long.
Yeah, but even a 4 or 5 hour campaign is still, if there's 72 of them.
There we've got, Assassin's Creed and Far Cry's and stuff like that, where we're looking at 90 hours. So, I mean, I'd argue nearly half of my waking hours this year have probably been spent on video games, which sounds like it points towards a very unhealthy mind, but at the same time, it's been wonderful.
I don't think that. I mean, it's one of those weird stigmas that's hung around, and I don't think there is anything unhealthy, because video games aren't what people perceive them to be, i.e., blood, guts, gore, shooting.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything. There's no reason why video games can't be just as healthy as stepping outside.
It's weird because I feel exactly the same way, and yet at the same time, if I spent a day playing like a video game for 8 hours, for some reason I still feel I can't shake the sort of stigma, but it's like it's even like less valuable than having like 8 hours in front of Netflix, and I don't know why. Even though you've done more in a game, you've been more progressive and proactive, and I've never been able to shake that, and I know it's purely from other people's opinions instead of my own.
Someone's damaged you, bro.
Yeah, and I don't know when.
Hurt
I have
you.
no idea when. It's so daft, but yeah, that's.
Well, it takes a while to break stigmas. It's okay. We're working on it. We'll get there.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is all about how much we love Guildford and how important Guildford is to us. So, what would be your favourite Guildford game and why?
Okay, it's a really tricky one. I think No Man's Sky.
Ooh.
And even from like day one, because I know it's changed so much, but I think I was lucky enough to, in the very early stages of No Man's Sky, fully appreciate like the scale of it. Because in a very, very early stage of it, I stumbled across someone else's planet, like a planet someone else had named. And that was just mind-blowing to me. Like, however, like 6 or 7 years ago or so, that I just... Because I as far as I was concerned, it was like, these are all planets that are just randomly generated sort of every time. I thought it was just a much larger scale version of the technology I saw in like Hogs of War when a map is randomly generated, but was obviously aware that this is on a scale of like trillions of planets. But to suddenly, like, I just thought statistically it was surely impossible to suddenly come across a planet that someone else had found and named. And I actually looked it up earlier today to find it. It's so unfortunate that the planet had been named Anal Bleaching because it spoiled the...
It was a beautiful
moment.
moment.
It spoiled the moment, and it was so... It was what was previously such a special moment, and I'm not.
There it's real.
And it was just. So it was a really, really beautiful moment, named so by X Chainsaw 46X.
Brilliant.
But that was the game just blew my mind in that regard, and it was just like unlike anything else I'd ever played, and I still haven't even played like the sort of latest expansions, and every time I see a trailer, it is just a different game every time. It's crazy.
And not only that, I mean, like you said, that you played it from the beginning and found pockets or planets or entire moments of joy within a very early. I don't want to say early iteration, but early iteration of a finished product.
For what is ostensibly a very lonely game.
Yeah,
like, that was the idea, but to suddenly come across that was crazy.
Insane. And meanwhile, as we all know, the internet went into absolute overdrive and ripped Hello Games to pieces and blah blah blah. It might have been the beginning of this year or end of last year, their community paid for a billboard right next to their office or studio that said "Thank you, Hello Games" or whatever. So they absolutely turned the whole thing around and ended up with a
crazy.
billboard.
I regret having not sort of played it in the last year or so. Mainly because also a friend of mine who I went to school with called Greg Buchanan wrote the Atlas Rising expansion, and I still haven't played it, and I should because I.
Oh, you must! Yeah, that'd be rad. Well, excellent choice.
Thank you.
Many people can agree with that.
Well, thank you, Hello Games.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure that gets to them. Don't worry. What would be the best example that you can think of a really amazing gaming moment that you've had in your gamer career?
I think it's a weird one. I mean, like this, it's usually like those next generational moments where I feel like it's so cliche to just replicate what, but there's a reason why so many people share the same sort of gaming moments of, oh my god, I can't believe games sort of developed in this way, from like first getting on the scooter in Vice City and hearing Billie Jean playing and being like, this is so vastly different. I think possibly playing GTA 3 for the first time, it was just the greatest moment in the game for me. Of just I just couldn't believe just that a game could be sort of played in that size map, and obviously you could barely go in any buildings, but you could go in like one or two, and I was like, wow, and there's more than one type of car, and I feel like such an ungrateful little shit for saying this, but I must have been about like 12 years old, and I unlocked the second island, which was basically Manhattan. I unlocked it the morning that me and my family were taking us on a lovely holiday to Australia for 3 weeks. And what would have been the absolute holiday of a lifetime, I spent 3 weeks being like, I can't wait to go back. I've just unlocked this new island, and I don't think they understand the scale of what's happened.
Australia's fine.
That is my most shameful, I think, childhood memory, that I was just ignoring the Great Barrier Reef. For this holiday that my parents had scrimped and saved for years. And I hope they're not seeing this, because I would never ever admit this to them. But like I remember, I was just sat there the whole time, just being like, I've got to get back. I got to get back right now.
Wow, that must have been
awful?
really hard, though.
It's not. It's in no way defensible.
Well, I mean, children are awful.
I've tried for years. I've tried for years to try and
all right, I won't
justify it.
You're terrible. But I mean, once it's in there, right? It's like an earworm. Once it's in there, and it's and the muscle memory and the I
think it's any gaming moment. I think any gaming moment is my favourite, where suddenly you played a pre-existing gaming format just from a new perspective. So GTA suddenly wasn't top down anymore, or like on something like Roller Coaster Tycoon or like Theme Park, where suddenly you got to ride a roller coaster that you built.
Yeah.
And that was just unreal. Early games are so built on linearity, which is the point. It completely makes sense. To suddenly not only be given the option to like make something yourself, but suddenly you go, right, I am now in the cockpit of this thing, but were it not for me, would not exist. Gives you like a megalomaniac sense of power that I don't think any other real life experience does, apart from just becoming a billionaire.
I think that's why we have God Games. I think everyone really relishes in that feeling, even if it's squashing, like whatever it is, the choice that you've decided to go with when you actually complete it is the most satisfying thing in the world. Even if it's The Sims and you're locking people at a swimming pool and taking all of the ladders out, whatever it may be.
I completely agree. And the thing is, I try and play everything as rationally as I can. I find games have never really... I'm still looking for a game where there's a morality meter where it's fully worthwhile, it's equally worthwhile exploring the evil side, and you won't always have the authorities chasing after you at all times, and get a horrible ending at the end. So I always try and play things as nicely as I can, which on something like Crusader Kings means you fucking suck, because you can't. That's not how you play the game. But I've always been happy, horribly playing God on other people's games, and I used to do this on my sister's version of The Sims. If ever I got the chance to sort of go on the computer where she wasn't there, I would just make new houses in the neighbourhood and just have like one guy in his vest and his boxers, and the house was just a corridor with like the cheapest version of a fridge you could have and like the clown painting and no windows. So when she came back to her computer, she assumed that like the game had made that, and she thought that was like what the developers intended, and she was like, these people are messed up. And I was like, yeah.
Do they not know the rules of their own game? Like, this is mad. Oh, I love that. I mean, I see what you mean in the sense that it's always nice to mess with other people's, but I've also found with God games that they're always more fun if there's a few of you and you're making absolutely horrific decisions, and you're all sat round together watching something just burn to the ground.
Oh yeah, that's tremendous fun. And also I know that there's like, but in the same way, like I mean, we touched on supermassive games earlier. Those, or like Detroit and like Man of Medan and Until Dawn. I hate if anyone gets killed off early on. I hate it, because I feel like you don't. I know the game, the storyline weaves itself around it, so you still get the full experience, but you just feel a bit emptier knowing that someone didn't make it and it was your fault.
Well, that's it, and you've kind of cemented your squad, you know, and you're happy. Yeah. Okay, I'm safe. I'm happy. Everything's fine. Yeah, I know the feeling. I know what you mean. Lots of people have died because of me. Lots of people. So if you could invite 3 video game characters, as many pixels as you want, or as few, that's also fine, to dinner, who would they be?
I would invite, because we spoke about it earlier, I'd invite 3 chosen at random, different astronaut aliens that you meet on the space stations in No Man's Sky.
Amazing.
And they would have difficulty communicating with each other, picking up, say, 1 word out of every 20, and have a really torrid time. And I'd say to them, now you fucking know how I feel. Because we spoke about loneliness in No Man's Sky. I love that game, and I have never felt lonelier than finally arriving at a space station where there's people, and you try and talk to them, and you go, "Oh, I'm." At least from that book earlier, I picked up the word "the," and that was it. Yeah. And you know, it's going to be hours before I've learned enough of a language to be able to have like one sentence together. Made me feel very sad indeed.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that really is desolate.
But it makes the game even better, because you go, I feel like I need to. I feel like I now work for the game, and I want to better myself and learn this language and improve. Yeah. I feel like a Brit abroad right now.
And all the while, like, the thing that I love, specifically going back to No Man's Sky, the thing that I love about it is that with every story that I hear, the kind of press run for that game was insane, as I'm sure you remember.
Yes.
And it all came back to Sean as a child, living in the outback in Australia, looking up at the sky and wondering. And every story I hear, always the very last image is Sean looking up at the sky as a little teeny little thing. The last thing that pops into my head is just the wonder that must have been in his mind so young to carry that passion forward into that, you know, that's crazy.
It makes you then concerned for the creators of other games, and if that's how they did it. So, like, was Neil Druckmann as a child looking down like a sewer drain, and he was like, yeah, humanity can stoop that low?
I heard Gary Carr had some awful time in hospitals. It's, you know, maybe it is. Maybe that's how it all happened.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and find out. This can be my new mission.
Okay.
Okay, I've got 2 questions left for you. So you wake up tomorrow morning, you're a game developer. What's your title? What are you doing?
I would want to work, and it would be a dream to work in video game writing, but specifically, in order to merge my current career into it, is to look on and expand on comedy in video games. Because I think that's one genre where I don't think an out-and-out comedy game would work, but I think there's so much room for scope in the way comedy works within existing video games. And that's obviously, there are so many games that are currently very funny, but because of the action that takes place, like Call of Duty Warzone can be hilarious, and like something like Fall Guys is naturally so funny because everything that happens is so utterly ridiculous, and you feel like you're watching Takeshi's Castle. But in terms of like the writing within video games, like comedy writing is like a specific craft and a skill, and it's so different to being like funny amongst friends or being like the funny person in the office. And I'd be really interested to see where that could sort of possibly go. For hundreds of games I've sort of ever played, I think the moment in Uncharted 2 where Nate and his friend are crawling along a roof surface, and this guard suddenly appears at the roof edge, and Nate's friend, who then becomes the bad guy, says, "There's a guy above you, there's a guy above you." And so you grab the guy's leg and you pull him down, he goes plummeting to the depths, and then his friend just says, "There's a guy below you, there's a guy below you." I think it's the only time I've ever like laughed out loud at a video game, because it was just so surprising, because it was like, oh, that's like a written joke, that's like a really well written joke, and that never happens. You get characters in games being like funny in that sort of Joss Whedon way, but where it's like, it's more like a character saying, so that's a thing, and it's like, well, that's not really a joke. It's like they're being fun, they're being lighthearted, but they're not being like funny. And I'd be so interested to know if that would work. But at the same time, I'm aware that like maybe comedy fundamentally as a concept in video games can't work, because in video games you have to concentrate. No matter how easy the game is, it's always got your full concentration at all times. And so I think the idea of someone almost essentially telling you a joke while you're trying to concentrate is infuriating. Like if you were trying to write an essay or get on with some work and someone was like, "So this guy walks into a bar," you'd be like, "Genuinely shut the fuck up, I'm trying to..." So I just need to know if it works or not. I'd be fascinated too. So yeah, if I wake up tomorrow and I was a comedy writer in video games, that would be the dream job.
I'd be interested to see how that goes as well. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens tomorrow morning. Fingers crossed.
Sure. Yeah. I'll let you know if I've been Freaky Friday.
Have you played Telltale's Tale from the Borderlands? Because that's supposed to be really funny. I've not, but it's the next one on my list.
So Telltale-wise, it's just been The Walking Dead and Wolf Among Us for me. So Wolf Among Us is quite light, but obviously Walking Dead is heavy.
Hurts.
I'm on the final season at the moment. I'm like 2 episodes into it, and it is heavy
it's painful stuff.
But
apparently it's supposed to be pretty funny, Borderlands.
Okay, I'd be intrigued. I'd be very, very interested.
Well, I'll if I get to it before you do, I'll let you know whether I think it's funny or not. Although whether that means anything, I don't really know. Okay, final question. If you could work for any Guildford studio, past or present, who would it be?
I've waxed lyrical about them probably too much in this interview. It's Supermassive.
Oh, that's lovely. Supermassive are friends of ours, and we love them very much.
If they want to send me a copy of Little Hope, then guys, I'll be very happy.
We'll clip that bad boy. We'll send it over. See what we can do.
So it's fine.
That's a great choice. So is it the horror genre that you really love?
Yeah. Although having said that, because they don't do like,
it's not all. Yeah.
The horror that we do isn't like out and out terrifying. I mean, it is scary. Like, some of it's scary. Certainly Until Dawn was, but it's just. I'm just so fascinated at the idea of, and again, it's like we mentioned earlier about the idea of scale. Like No Man's Sky blows you away with a sense of scale. Basically, I didn't know something could have this many planets that people can sort of interact with. And then something like Supermassive deals with scale in a different way, because you feel like you're watching a film, and your actions at any point are only really swiping left or swiping right, but they still obviously there's a lot of weight to those actions. Means that like because it makes you feel like you're watching a film. You then trust everything you see as canon, and that everything you see happening is how it's sort of meant to happen, which is why you then find it so baffling. And I can't really think of any other video game experience that's like this, but I remember watching someone on Twitch streaming Man of Medan, and like they were halfway through the game, and there was this guy fully in the mix of the scenes, who in my version of the game had escaped in like the first 5 minutes, and then wasn't in the game for the rest of it. And it just but I was watching the stream just like, no, that's wrong. That's not, no, he's not in it. And it was just astonishing to see like so much dialogue had been sort of rewritten and melded round and weaved around to sort of encapsulate, incorporate any possible eventuality and experience and button press anyone could sort of have. And you see it in a kind of semi-way in so many games, like say, so I'm playing Divinity Original Sin 2 at the moment, and I'm blown away by the amount of dialogue. There's so much dialogue, and I remember reading in reviews, it's incredible that no matter who's in your party, every time you walk to a new location, your characters will comment on it and go, "This place smells terrible, I don't really like it too," that sort of thing. But still, ultimately, when you listen to it, you can still feel that they're individually recorded lines of dialogue that aren't really interacting with each other. They're more, it's not really a conversation that you're sort of hearing. Whereas in Supermassive games, it's just, those Unless Remy Malek spent like 48 hours in a studio without a single break. I have no idea how they recorded all that. I just have no idea how many
it's quite something.
versions of the storyline there are. But every time I've played those games, I've never ever wanted to deviate away from the ending that I had the first time, because I'm like, no, that's the canon ending. I'm really sorry, guys, there's no other ending.
That's how it goes. But closed. Yeah, fair enough. Glenn, that's a perfect place to stop. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and for being so passionate about games, frankly. Much fun. All right, dude. Take care. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend, guys.
See you, Glenn.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.